Right, good evening everybody. Welcome to the April Cabinet meeting, the first meeting with our new high-tech system in place. Rather alarming pictures of me all around the council chamber. That will put off the viewers at home if nothing else does. Fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarms are activated, vacate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones. Now, do not make or receive calls while the meeting is in progress. Please note the meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. Will also be recorded and subsequently available on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? No. Following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item 4, Councillors Austin and Yates. Item 5, Councillor Garner. Item 6, Councillor Austin. Item 8, Councillor Austin. Item 9, Councillors Wing and Bayford. Does anybody else wish to speak under 20.1? Councillor Davis. Microphone, please, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. You should have me down for 4, 5, 7 and 9.
Okay. Is anybody else? No. Thank you. We have no apologies because Cabinet is all here. Does anyone have an interest to declare the items of business on the agenda this evening? No. Minutes of the previous meeting on the 19th of March. I propose we take the minutes as read. Do I have a seconder? Members, please check your voting pad and say whether you agree or not.
We don't have to vote, do we?
Unsurprisingly, we have a unanimous vote in favour. So we move on to the first substantive item of the evening, which is the petition regarding the scenic railway at Dreamland. This item is to respond to the petition regarding Dreamland's decision to cease to operate the scenic railway, which was debated, which was discussed at full council on March the 26th and referred to Cabinet. The petition reflects the extent of public concern about Dreamland's decision, and that concern is shared by the council, and indeed was the subject of a motion that I moved in February. Further to a question at the March meeting, we've included at Annex 1 in the report the council's legal advice on the current position and its ability to intervene. The key points are that the council does not have any statutory power to compel the operation of the scenic railway. The council cannot require the owner to disclose technical, financial or commercial documents unless this forms part of a live planning or enforcement process, and the council's statutory responsibilities relate to the preservation of the listed structure, not to its operation as a ride. Councillors will also be aware that the Deputy Leader, Councillor Whitehead, has been in correspondence with MHCLG about the scope of its powers regarding listed buildings, and has received advice that confirms our own legal advice, and that this is also the position of Historic England. I am, however, meeting Historic England with officers next week to explore their position further, and we continue to seek a meeting with the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which has an extant grant agreement with Sands Heritage Limited covering the scenic railway. This is the most likely mechanism through which pressure could be exerted on Dreamland. However, that could only be done by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and based on their agreement. Their public position does not suggest that they are able to or intend to challenge Dreamland's decision. Concerns have been expressed that the council should have included a requirement to operate the scenic railway in the sale of the whole site to Sands Heritage Limited, which was agreed by the Conservative administration in August 2019. This issue does not appear to have been raised at either the Cabinet meeting or the subsequent call-in by the Overview and Scrutiny panel. In practice, there is internal correspondence which says that the heads of terms for the sale had already been agreed with the Board of Arrowgrass, then the owners of Sands Heritage, in October 2018. The advice of our current legal team, contained in the report, is that if the council had sought to guarantee the continued operation of the scenic railway, this would likely have been viewed as so onerous as to constitute an unreasonable restraint. And even if it had been agreed, it would have been very difficult to enforce, short of the council stepping in to operate the attraction itself. Regardless, there is no such provision in the sale agreement. While I did meet with the Chief Executive of Dreamland following the announcement, and we recognise that the owners continue to provide a culturally and economically significant asset for Margate, the company has been unwilling to supply further information to support its decision or to explain it in public at an OSP meeting. In my view, this is damaging to Dreamland's reputation and to public trust, particularly as any proposed change of use for the scenic railway will require such disclosures and public discussion to take place. Cabinet is recommended to note and consider the petition as detailed in the report, to note the limited powers available to the Council to protect the use of the scenic railway and the recommended responses to the specific asks set out in the petition in section 5, to agree that Council will undertake an annual inspection of the scenic railway and take appropriate enforcement action should the structure fall into substantial disrepair, to note that a meeting between the Leader of the Council, Council officers and representatives from Historic England is scheduled for the 6th of May to discuss the scenic railway, to note that officers have contacted the National Lottery Heritage Fund seeking a meeting about the scenic railway, but are yet to receive a substantive response, and to note that the Council has formally requested copies of the technical reports commissioned by Dreamland about the scenic railway, but that these have not been provided. I move the recommendations. Can I have a seconder, please? Lots of volunteers. Councillor Bright got in first, I think. And speaking under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
I was going to speak in place of Councillor Yates, who wasn't sure he could be here, so I'll hand over to him. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to say, to begin with, thank you very much for publishing the legal advice. I think it's comprehensive, and a lot of the points you made today give me confidence that you are engaging and having those follow-up meetings, which I think was kind of an essential part of whatever happens next. So my only question is, you mentioned this meeting on the 6th of May. How can the public find out what is the output of that meeting? Will there be minutes? Will there be open transparency about what's discussed in that meeting? Obviously, some of it might be legally privileged because it's people's positions legally, but I think the public want to know what's going on and the next steps. So if you can provide any information about that, that'd be appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll give that consideration, and obviously if there's anything substantive to say, then we would want to communicate that, but I think we'd need to have the meeting first to see what it's appropriate to disclose. It may well be that there isn't anything substantive which comes out of it, but I think we need to have the meeting first. But we'll give that due consideration, Councillor Yates. Thanks. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chair. What has become apparent, and again, I welcome the feedback we've had, and also the fact that we seem to be united across the floor as to looking for a resolution on this. However, there's a lot of talk, and we absolutely would never and should never be in a position where we can dictate whether they operate the thing or not. And something's become apparent out of this. What a lot of us have been arguing is that what we do have the ability to do is to force them to maintain the condition as listed. And that I think we do have the legal power and authority to do, because that's the whole purpose. And it's grade 2 star listed, not even just grade 2. And if you look at the conditions on any other grade 2 star listed asset and how it has to be maintained, or the spirit of the listing is to ensure that maintenance. So I think we have to be very clear, because I personally had seen it from the perspective that I've just described, rather than obviously a lot of people are emotionally upset, and it would be very nice to see it functioning. It makes no sense, if it's in the right condition, not to see it functioning, because some of the excuses that have been given have been a bit disingenuous, to say the least. Being one of those that went and delivered the letter, it gave us a chance to look at the condition. And one of the things that was apparent to me was that a lot of the framework just wasn't protected, treated or painted. And yet, if you look at the historic pictures, had that been restored to the correct condition as required by the listing, it would have been painted. But the thing's covered in green algae and things, and it's willful neglect, in my opinion, rather than... But I think it's important that we differentiate between, and absolutely, we obviously don't have the power to make a third party conduct themselves in a given way, and thank God, because that would be a worse state than we're in at the moment. However, and I've used the word state advisedly, but I do think there's possibly room for enforcement just to keep it in a proper condition, as opposed to it being some facsimile of what was or what never was. Because I mean, they're claiming the timber's so old. It's not. It was rebuilt, what, 8 years ago, 10, whatever. But as I say, that's I think needs defining as to what some of us are pushing for in terms of enforcement is the listing rather than the terms of it.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I mean, one of the recommendations is that there should be an annual inspection, and I think that's the appropriate way to take that forward. Obviously, any action we take has to be proportionate and reasonable. I haven't heard in the discussions that I've had with officers concerns about the current state. I know you've expressed concerns, but I'm sure that when we carry out the annual inspection, we'll be able to take a view on that. But certainly that's one of the recommendations in front of Cabinet, so I think that will carry forward. I'm not going to ask officers to speculate about the current condition of the timber, because I think that's a bit unreasonable. And I'm sure they have a view. Okay, members. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Leader. As members will know, I have communicated with the House of Commons, the House of Lords and MHCLG regarding the Scenic Railway, and I will continue to. If we genuinely want to bring our Scenic Railway back into use and want the relevant information shared as to why it was closed, we will have to use every means possible to do so. In consideration of this, I have set up a parliamentary petition, which is on my Helen for Thanet page and has also been shared widely across social media. As has been made clear by several members in this room, this is not a partisan issue. It is a community issue, and the more attention it has, the better. This petition would require Dreamland and Live Nation to provide evidence to the planning authority to justify their closure of the Scenic Railway. Currently, they are refusing to release any documents relating to their decision-making, and their reasons given for closure have changed several times, again, with no evidence provided. Ironically, the Heritage Dreamland cinema sign currently states ride on and on and on, when the obvious question is, on what exactly? Dreamland have not listened. Live Nation have not listened. So now we need to make Parliament listen. The petition is as follows. I ask Parliament to strengthen planning laws and require any organisation wanting to end the use of a listed asset to provide valid planning reasons to the planning authority if they wish to end the function of a listed asset. This would ensure that private companies cannot close heritage-listed assets such as the Scenic Railway in Margate unless the local planning authority also supports this action. What is happening in Margate is we feel an example of why we need better protections for all of our listed structures. Please, if you would like to change this situation, sign the petition and share with your networks if you care about the future of our heritage assets. We need to ensure that all of our voices are heard at a national level. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Leader. I totally support the petition. Obviously, I think that goes without saying, but I'd also like to thank officers for not just for the report, but for the work and the continued efforts to engage with Dreamland and obviously with English Heritage as well. I did just want to repeat what I said at council, because I'm not sure if I made myself clear at the time, but I think my point of view is that we know we can't tell a private operation how to conduct their business, but from an operational point of view, I think this represents a total failure of imagination on the part of Dreamland. I mean, Dreamland as it is now is an amazing asset to Margate as an outdoor music venue by the sea. However, it's obvious to anyone that a venue with a working vintage scenic railway is a genuinely unique proposition on a European or even global scale. So from a brand perspective, it's absolutely insane that they would deny themselves what's clearly a strong USP. So on that basis alone, they need to listen to us, and I'd encourage them to think again, because I think this brings them something, a real point of difference that will help attract, visitors not just to Dreamland but obviously to Margate and beyond.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, members, that's been moved and seconded. The recommendations have been moved and seconded, so we'll have a vote. And everybody's voted. And surprisingly, there are 6 votes for. Thank you. We move on to item 5, that's the Pride in Place Impact Fund, to be introduced by Councillor Duckworth.
I'm very pleased to present the report which seeks Cabinet approval for the delivery approach and investment strategy for the £1.5 million Pride in Place Impact Fund. This funding provides an opportunity to invest in visible improvements in valued places across the district. Our primary goal is to ensure the effective and efficient delivery of the full £1.5 million capital allocation. To achieve maximum tangible benefits and value for money, the recommended strategy focuses significant investment on a limited number of impactful capital projects in Margate and Broadstairs. This approach avoids the challenges and limited impact associated with pursuing numerous smaller schemes. The investment proposals align with the core Pride in Place Impact Fund objectives of improving community spaces, public spaces, and High Street Town Centre revitalisation. Key schemes being progressed for detailed costing and design include returning the Grade 2 listed Margate Museum and Old Town Hall buildings to public use through essential structural repairs modernisation, enhancing some of the historic features, pathways and specific improvements to accessibility and potential reinstatement of the water fountain at Piermont Park, providing a £50,000 seed funding grant to Sarathorn Theatre to support capital investment to secure the theatre's long-term sustainability as a community hub. Critically, the strategy also includes an allocation of £100,000 to fund viable capital projects identified by 8 town and parish councils, ensuring investment benefits extend across Thanet's villages. This proposed strategy follows a 4-week public engagement activity via the Your Voice Thanet portal, which gathered feedback on shortlisted projects. We have also ensured consultation with the district's MPs and key stakeholders, which will continue through proposed decision-making panel. I recommend that Cabinet approve the proposed investment approach and associated recommendations. This approval will allow officers to proceed with developing costed project proposals, which will be brought back to Cabinet for final scheme approval in due course. The recommendations are as follows. Approve the proposed investment approach to focus the majority of the £1.5 million Pride in Place Impact Fund investment in Margate and Broadstairs. Note that officers will develop costed project proposals with final schemes to be brought back to Cabinet for approval. Agree to the allocation of £100,000 for projects identified by town and parish councils. Approve the establishment of a decision-making panel to include the MPs representing the district and relevant Cabinet members. Recommend to full council that £1.5 million Pride in Place Impact Fund capital be added to the council's budget to be used in accordance with the arrangements referred to in this report. Agree in principle the payment of a £50,000 grant to Sarathorn Theatre on the basis of receiving acceptable proposals for the investment. The grant agreement to be signed by the Head of Regeneration and Growth in consultation with the S151 officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Keane, thank you. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Press the right button now. You won't be surprised to hear that I welcome this Pride in Place capital investment across a few projects in Thanet, and I'm just going to focus on the Piermont Park element. This is a much loved and recently much discussed green space at the heart of our town, and any commitment to improving accessibility and enhancing its features is something I support. The introduction of a ramped access point from the High Street has been requested previously and would open up the park more fully to residents and visitors alike, particularly those with mobility challenges, parents with pushchairs and older members of our community. That is a clear and worthwhile objective. The potential reinstatement of the water fountain is something that has also been much discussed previously and offers an opportunity not only to restore a historic feature, but also to bring renewed life and character to the park. Done well, it could become a focal point that enhances the experience of everyone who spends time there. So while I support the ambition behind these proposals, I do want to focus on an issue that is just as important as the initial investment itself, the long-term sustainability and in particular aftercare. We have seen in many public spaces that the real challenge is not simply delivering a project, but maintaining it to a high standard over time. With that in mind, I would like to ask a couple of questions. Firstly, what clear and funded maintenance plan, if any, will be in place for any changes implemented as a result of this capital investment? It is vital that we understand not just the upfront costs, but the ongoing commitment required to keep these assets safe, clean and fully operational. Secondly, have we considered the full life cycle costs of these improvements? Not just annual maintenance, but the eventual replacement of key components. And third, will Broadstairs and St Peters Town Council be engaged as early as possible in the process to explore their potential role in ongoing aftercare, which may help resolve the first two questions? As you know, the Town Council has strong connection with the community and of course the park. They're already licensed to look after the gardens in the park by TDC, and they are well placed to support aspects of ongoing aftercare. Early partnership working could strengthen long-term sustainability and local ownership of these improvements. Just to be clear, I've raised these questions in an effort to strengthen the proposal. If we get the aftercare right, the investment will not only deliver immediate benefits, but will stand the test of time and represent true value for our community. I look forward to seeing the detailed proposals and to supporting a scheme that combines ambition with long-term sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Do you want to reply to that, Councillor Duckworth?
Just briefly, I'm sure we will be working with Broadstairs and St Peters Town Council.
Thanks. We're currently just identifying an internal project lead and they're scoping out all of the things that, as you've mentioned, have been discussed previously and looking at other options in the park. They're also looking at their kind of stakeholder mapping, who they need to contact, and obviously Broadstairs and St Peters Town Council is first on that list. So the points that you raised around the future management opportunities is certainly something that I'm sure they'd be more than willing to talk through. And as with any of the regeneration schemes, we will be looking at those long-term costs of management and maintenance and whether they're the right things to deliver in the park. So all of those points that you raise will be picked up. And as soon as we've got a project lead, we'll be in contact with the council. Thanks.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Dana. A couple of questions. One, and I really welcome the allocation, obviously, for the villages, the parish councils. What I don't quite understand is, with an allocation of 100,000, why it's encouraged to apply up to 20,000 per viable project, because that sets parish councils competitively against each other. The budget that's available, if you split it equally in simple terms, is 12,500 per parish council. So to ask for projects valued at up to 20,000 either disadvantages a neighbour if the application's successful, or runs the risk of trying to build a bigger project than to build value into it, where a limit a bit closer to it, because I understand that not everyone's going to bid for the exact amount. It just seems an awful lot of headroom between, if every council applied the same, for between 12,500 and a 20,000 limit in it. And the other question I had is whether we have a time frame and process approved for the applications on this, because also we're trying to get councils working a bit more collaboratively on that. So it would be good to know what the time frame on the process is and how we can move this forward, but meaningfully, rather than just putting in applications to something that isn't going to work because it didn't get funded.
Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I think you nearly answered your own question. We don't exactly know how many people will apply, and some organisations will apply for lesser amounts. I'm going to pass over to Ms Askew on the time frame and the process.
Thank you. If I just go back to the first point about the values, I expect that some places will apply for smaller amounts, or alternatively, the amount of funding that they need will support other funded projects. So it might be that they're fundraising and a smaller amount of capital can act as match funding and help them leverage in other investment, which is obviously something that we're really interested in as part of these programmes. So I think there's an opportunity to do that. And where we've run other similar small scale grant funding programmes, we've asked if there's the ability to flex. If they were given a slightly smaller amount than they'd asked for, can they still deliver a slightly smaller scheme? So I think all of those options are available, and also the team will be able to work with town and parish councils to identify if there are other funding programmes that they could be looking at as part of that process. I'm just finalising the grant documentation, so the application form, guidance and FAQs, etc., and hope to have those prepared and ready for the town and parish council forum. We're also looking at holding like an open session for those town and parish councils to come in with any questions they may have around capital funding or other kind of statutory questions. So we're just pulling together a date and available officers for that as well, which will help support the process. I don't have a deadline date yet, but I will, as part of that process of providing the guidance, will set out a timeline with that as well.
Yeah, from my perspective, Councillor Davis, I mean, we were talking about this yesterday, and I think we're mindful of two things. One is that we need to give the parish councils enough time to deliver their projects, and secondly, that we probably need to chat to them in an informal setting so they can ask us questions about what might be acceptable, what might not be acceptable. I mean, in terms of the funding criteria, not what we're looking for. And to do that informally and to have a collaborative process. So I think that we're on top of that, but we will bring forward that information. Members, Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Leader. I'm really proud that our Labour government's given this Labour administration the opportunity to allocate these funds across the district, and more so that we've been given the opportunity to be fair and equitable with the distribution. I'm pleased that we're able to support the parishes with whatever their chosen projects might be. And to the points that have just been raised, I think these projects might not be huge, but relatively small projects can often have a far greater impact than they might appear, that they could at that very local level. As Cabinet Member for Tourism and Culture, I'm also incredibly pleased that this fund will be used to bring Margate Museum back to life, to be enjoyed by residents and visitors alike. Behind the scenes, we've already carried out significant works to safeguard the building and make it compliant, including repairs to the roof, new electrics, etc. This fund, however, will allow us to share the town's heritage with the public and, under the guidance of our excellent museums manager, tell the story of our country's first seaside destination once again. There's so much in there that's exciting to see, and I really look forward to visiting the museum when it's fully in use. As the member for Viking Ward, it's also a privilege to be able to deliver investment to my own town. The Sarah Thorne Theatre is a much-loved venue, and I've spoken before about the times me and Councillor Joanne Bright have enjoyed watching our children perform there. I'm really pleased that there'll be generations of Broadstairs parents who will now enjoy that same opportunity. I'd also like to welcome Michael Wheatley-Ward to the Chamber. He's worked incredibly hard to safeguard Broadstairs' only theatre, and I know that the venue has a very bright future under his stewardship. And finally, I'm especially excited about the proposed investment on Piermont Park. I think Councillor Garner said it already. The people of Broadstairs have been incredibly enthusiastic about the prospect of restoring our park, and I know the Town Council's gardeners are eager to get started on planting and maintenance. It's a beautiful space, and it's a real haven in the centre of town. I can't think of a better legacy as a council than to have restored the fountain and to have designed in accessibility so it can be enjoyed by everyone.
Anybody else? No? Just worth underlining that we've, in bringing these proposals forward, we've had already had conversations with both Sir Roger Gow and Polly Billington as the local MPs, which is part of the scheme, and they'll both be involved in the decision-making process going forward, so it's good to have their support as well. Members, that one's been moved and seconded. Time to vote. Oh yeah, I know, I've got to remember that you've got to press a button. And that's been agreed unanimously. We move on to item 6, which is the housing assistance policy, and that one is Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Leader. Tonight, Cabinet is being asked to agree that the consultation draft of the housing assistance policy is approved, that the Council conducts a public consultation on the draft policy, that the results of the consultation be published on the Council's website, and that following the consultation, any minor amendments be approved by the Head of Housing and Planning in consultation with the portfolio holder for housing. Our housing assistance policy outlines how we can use our Better Care Fund and capital receipts from the repayment of previous disabled facilities grants and other historic grants and receipts, which has great significance for how we can best support inclusion and disability within our community. And adapting our assistance policy to allow for flexibility of usage in this funding can not only support the acquisition and creation of accessible property, but also support disabled needs within the community. And so ensuring we use this fund as effectively as possible is absolutely essential for inclusion. The Better Care Fund money is currently spent on individual mandatory disabled facilities grants and discretionary top-up grants, a health and housing coordinator who's co-funded with Dover, our Home Straight scheme, which works to support those who struggle with hoarding, our Handy Person Enablement Service, also co-funded with Dover, and contribution towards salaries for staff who are facilitating the expenditure of this budget. The capital receipts received from the disabled facilities grant repayments can be used to pay for other types of grants that have a much larger scope for inclusion or for investment into public services. It is proposed to spend some of the recycled monies, i.e. those monies returned through land charges placed on the properties at the time of the works being undertaken, on public realm enhancements to support our disabled community, such as our new accessible boardwalks at Margate and Ramsgate. In addition, the draft policy further proposes to allocate a proportion of this funding to new empty homes top-up loans to increase availability of properties. The primary objective of schemes already agreed will be to improve community health and independence by removing physical barriers to, for example, the coastline and ensuring heritage and natural assets remain inclusive for older residents and those with disabilities, to increase the number of empty homes that can be returned to use through the Kent No Use Empty scheme. Cabinet are recommended to agree that the revised draft housing assistance policy be consulted upon with a range of stakeholders to ensure it is robust and reflects the need for housing assistance. The consultation will reach those who responded previously and interested stakeholders and will make it clear that it is only recycled grant funding that will be used for projects of a wider scope and that this scheme will not in any way impact the delivery of disabled facilities grants. I move the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Duckworth. Thank you. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Whitehead. We fully support this. It's a great idea. Really pleased to see the possibility of increasing the number of empty homes that can be returned to use, and very excited about the broader implications and removing physical barriers to people's access to the coastline, etc. We've heard possibilities of some schemes that may be funded through this. I'm wondering when we'll have a handle on whether there's any spare money and whether there might be other schemes that we could also fund through that mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. It feels very odd not being able to turn. I'm equally excited about this in so many ways because the widened scope of this allows for genuine inclusion, whereas in terms of the Disabled Facilities Grant, there is a very, very specific usage, and it's a really important one. But the fact that we can use recycled monies to improve inclusion across Thanet is exceptionally exciting. We are looking at the scope of what we can do so that we can assess where we can make the most difference. So it's very much not going to be sort of a piecemeal approach to maybe this scheme or maybe another, but we will be bringing forward a full explanation to Council on how we can use this and how it can best benefit the community. Thank you.
Members. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Leader. I'm particularly pleased to see the accessibility issues that are being addressed through this. We have a large elderly population and a high number of people with health and disability issues, and measures to enable everyone to access our beautiful coastline and make the most of it are really welcome. So I think this is a great piece of work. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? That's been moved and seconded, so would people like to vote, please? That's been agreed unanimously. And we'll move on to item 7, which is the asset management disposal of surplus property. Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to provide background detail on various properties identified as surplus to requirements. Most notably, the Council's recently obtained vacant possession of the Coach House for the first time in over 35 years. And it is recommended in this report that the Council retains ownership while transferring the maintenance and operation to a new tenant via a lease, all the while ensuring that the property's new proposed use fully complies with land covenants, following on from the success of the recently leased and renovated North Down House, which saw a new special provision school open in our district. The report provides a summary of the risks associated with retaining the properties, explores alternative uses and outlines their potential disposal options. Cabinet is asked to support a recommendation for disposal of the surplus assets, which would allow capital receipts from the sales to contribute towards the approved capital programme as set out in the medium-term financial plan. These proceeds are to be directly reinvested into the remaining assets retained by the Council to fund necessary repairs, maintenance and capital improvements. Generating capital receipts from asset disposals is a crucial component of the Council's financial and budgetary planning, otherwise key operational buildings and statutory service delivery functions will be impacted due to a lack of available capital investment. I move the following recommendations. Approve an open market disposal of the garage at Hopeville Avenue, Broadstairs. 2. Approve a long leasehold disposal of the Coach House, North Dam Park, Margate. 3. Approve the covenant release on the title at the former St John Ambulance Training Centre, Ramsgate. 4. Approve the disposal of Margate Lawn Tennis Club. Thank you.
Have a seconder, please. Councillor Keane, thank you. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. You'll be pleased to hear I'm going to be fairly brief on this. The report into the proposed disposal of the Lawn Tennis Club simply talks about proposed disposal, or doesn't talk about how it would be done. And is this talking about just open market disposal, or is it, because I know there's ongoing negotiations with the tennis club, which obviously as an existing leaseholder they're affected in terms of their how shall we say, confidence moving forward, if nothing else, but obviously would want to be able to take it on themselves. So are we talking about this approval will lead to help that negotiation? Are we talking about putting it out on the general market?
I think, Councillor Davis, at 2.10, it says TDC is proposing to dispose of the asset directly to the tenant under special purchaser circumstances, given it is the existing occupier, which seems fairly clear to me. Sorry?
In which case, thank you for that, but I've not got that in front of me.
It is in the published report. Okay, you must have missed it.
No, but thank you for that. There's the answer. Thank you.
Don't wish to steal your thunder, Councillor Duckworth, if there's anything you want to add to that. If not, members, any comments on these? No? Okay. That's been moved and seconded, so it's time to vote. And that's agreed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, Jackie Baker's Recreation Ground Multi-Sports Hubs Project. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This report updates the Cabinet on progress of the Jackie Baker's Recreation Ground Multi-Sports Hub project, which is proceeding through Phase 3 of the Football Foundation Hubs programme. Phase 3, which was approved in December 2025, is focused on producing an outline design, initial project cost plan and a draft business plan. This phase costs up to £333,000, funded 60% up to £200,000 by the Football Foundation grant and 40%, £133,000, funded by the Council. Since January 2026, the project team has focused on appointing a full-time sports facilities project manager who started in March 16th, 2026, appointing required consultancies via the UK Leisure and AGP framework, completing 4 phases of community engagement with over 220 residents. This demonstrates strong support for a community-focused multi-sport hub. The engagement emphasises the need for accessible, safe and quality facilities. The preferred location for the hub site is to the south of Jackie Baker's recreation ground because it maximises the number of full-size grass pitches retained, creates a comprehensive multi-sport hub by securing the athletics track as a community asset and delivers more retained parkland for community use. The south location is strongly supported by the community but has the disadvantage of greater delivery complexity due to the requirement for legal land agreements. The alternative, the north location, was considered simpler to deliver but would retain fewer grass pitches and would not include the athletics track. Officers are pursuing external funding for the additional facilities, and this includes potential funding from the Lawn Tennis Association through the DCMS for 3 covered tennis courts and 3 covered paddle courts. Potential funding from British Cycling to develop an active track for cycling, running and walking, and a BMX pump track. This would likely be a future Phase 2 addition. The Council plans to apply for new play area funding for a fully inclusive play area near the multi-sports hub cafe. The current Phase 3 expenditure of £133,000 is necessary to validate the project's viability and serves as a gateway to a protected £10 million regeneration scheme. Key risks to the overall project include construction costs increasing beyond financial viability, the council being unable to achieve the required 40% match funding for the full scheme, and a failure to achieve planning consent. The scheme is anticipated to provide positive activities for young people and reduce antisocial behaviour by improving community safety and cohesion. Cabinet is recommended to approve the following actions. Explore the south side of Jackie Baker's recreation ground as the location for the new multi-sport hub site. Use the extensive community engagement findings to inform the project scope. Head of Coastal and Public Realm, Tony Marmo, should continue engaging with the Lawn Tennis Association for potential funding for covered tennis and paddle courts, British Cycling for potential funding for the pump track and walking cycle routes around the recreation ground, and maximise opportunities for community play, recreation and physical activities. I propose the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Bright. And speaking under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Alban. Really exciting to see this investment in facilities in Northwood Ward and in Thanet more generally. I'm really struck by the results of the community engagement survey, where it says 51% of respondents rated the park as poor or very poor, which is really disappointing, and there's so much potential there. It's great to see new facilities planned there. I think obviously continuing the community engagement that has been started there is going to be crucial. And I know there's been a lot of concern on social media about, supposing we get all these facilities there and it's all marvellous, etc., 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 what are the implications for travel, transport, parking, all those kinds of things? If this becomes a real focus, many of those roads are very narrow, they're parked up, it's difficult for residents. How do we tackle those things, and how do we keep working with the community to make sure that it feels like a fully accessible and open space for all members of the community, including, as has been highlighted, young women and girls, older residents, disabled residents. So parking and community engagement are my questions on that. Thank you, Councillor Alban.
Councillor Alban.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Austin. I think it's important, the whole community aspect of it and the engagement with local residents. I think the other important factor for me is that this Jackie Baker's won't just be for Ramsgate. It will be across Thanet. And as you're probably aware, we have been and continue to work with the school, which is adjacent to Jackie Baker's, and part of the programme is to have a parking area, and that's another reason why the south side of the site was the best in our opinion, because it also relates to the school. That will also include that the school are happy for part of their parking area to be used for the Jackie Baker site. When I was elected in 2023, this was the first thing that I got involved in through the community, and met with local residents and newly elected ward councillors, and I made it a priority that I wanted to get this done, if at all possible, during the 4 years that we have. And I think it's important to say that everybody involved in this, from Tony Marmo down to all of the groups that are involved, all of other fellow councillors involved, the ward councillors, but particularly the people who actually use it at present. And you're quite right in what you said, in that nothing had been done with Jackie Bakers for donkey's years. Previous councils, for whatever reason, I don't know, just didn't put any money into it. And certainly it wasn't supported by the previous ward councillors there. So I think this will prove to be, should we get this up and running and done, and I'm confident of that, and because I'm confident in Tony Marmo. But he's probably not as confident as I am. But it is such a worthwhile project that it's not just for children, it's for everybody to come in and use that, with a cafe, with better lighting at night, safe place for women and girls to engage. And just so you know, we're just starting involving our women councillors to get involved, and plus local groups, etc., to get involved, to give women's point of view as to how they could actually feel safe in a place like Jackie Bakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. I mean, I'd like to draw attention to the engagement exercise that's being carried out by James Gregory, I think, which I think is really excellent and is reported with the Cabinet report. Councillor Bryant referred earlier to legacies of Thanet District Council. Well, I think this will be a stunning legacy for Thanet District Council, and I'm full of praise for Mr Marmo, because I know that he has been the driving force behind this initiative, and he has, started off with a discussion with the community and an issue with the athletics track at the school, and what's coming out of it now is really exciting for the community. It's really exciting for the council, and I'm confident that we're going to deliver a project that will make a real difference. And I'm also aware that the people who live around Jackie Bakers are protective of their recreation ground, their local open space. They don't want to see it completely taken over by sport. They want to be able to walk their dogs, and we will respect and honour that, and their voice is heard at every stage of this process. We have regular meetings. I'm there, Councillor Alban's there. There's a whole raft of representatives from different organisations, including the local community and the school. And I'm sure that together we're designing a project which is really exciting and which I'm confident we're going to be able to deliver. So that's my view. Members? Councillor King.
Thank you. Lack of activities and facilities for young people linked to antisocial behaviour, which of course is the next item. And I think this is a great initiative that, alongside the sports facilities and that going on in other parts of the area, we're bringing this forward. As you've said, it's not just for young people, but I do think it's something that we need to be providing for young people alongside other members of the public. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Councillor Bright?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to add, but what I would say is I would just again underpin I welcome the points that Councillor Alban made around safety of women and girls, but also the efforts to which that has been part of this project from the beginning. I think it was one of the very first overview and scrutiny panels that I attended where Councillor Bright brought that up, and there was a lot of conversation, a lot of recommendations, and I'm not going to say the name again, but the officer in particular, who's been mentioned already, took those recommendations on board way back then. And as well, special mention needs to go to Councillors Owen, Hughes, Driver and Scobie for their efforts as ward councillors as well. This is a really, really positive thing, and I think we can all, across the chamber, get 100% behind it.
Thank you. Councillor Alban. Yeah.
I think I'm considering that we should name it the Marmo the Marmo Municipal Game Area.
Okay. Members, if we're done on that one, it's time to vote. And that is agreed. And we can move on to antisocial behaviour and alcohol PSPO, a subject to which we've visited many times before. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to be bringing back the revised antisocial behaviour and alcohol PSPO to Cabinet. Most of you will be aware of the history of the PSPO, which was previously agreed in July 25, but not implemented because of the threat of legal challenge. Since then, we have experienced increased antisocial behaviour, particularly related to alcohol misuse, and have gathered substantial evidence from residents and stakeholders to demonstrate clearly the need for the PSPO as presented. The evidence makes for shocking reading and is not the way we want our towns to be experienced by residents, visitors and businesses. Councillors are being asked to consider the evidence base for a proposed new PSPO and to agree that officers should consult on these proposals. Councillors should note that some late evidence has been received and is included in the third supplementary agenda. This is a letter from Broadstairs and St Peter's Chamber of Commerce, as well as a letter from Ramsgate Traders Association. Councillors should also note that some minor typos were noted in the proposed PSPO as drafted and published at Annex 1. These have been amended and have now been published in the fourth supplementary agenda, and officers apologise for any confusion caused by these. The typos were very minor and involved the following changes. Under section 10 of the proposed order, it should read nothing in this order shall apply to a person who is consuming alcohol on premises listed. Under what happens if you fail to comply with this order and the alcohol section, it should read a requirement is not valid if, when asked to do so, the constable or by the constable or authorised person. And under appeals, an interested person or someone who lives in, regularly works in or visits the restricted area has been changed to just an interested person. Councillors will see from the evidence presented in this report that there is an ongoing issue of alcohol-related antisocial behaviour in the Margate, Broadstairs and Ramsgate areas. The evidence obtained in this report indicates that these are significant issues across the three towns, and that in the town centres of Margate and Ramsgate, these are issues all year round and have a really significant impact on businesses as well as the local community. For this reason, a blanket ban on alcohol use in the certain streets in Margate and Ramsgate is being proposed, whilst in the other parts of the restricted areas, the ban only relates to antisocial behaviour that relates to alcohol, and there is no proposed blanket ban. There is no proposed blanket ban in Broadstairs. The restriction in relation to urination and defecation relates to all areas. The maps attached to this report clearly identify the streets where the proposed PSPO will apply. Officers propose to carry out a comprehensive consultation exercise for a period of 4 weeks in accordance with statutory provisions. A further report will be presented to Cabinet once officers have carefully considered the results of consultation. Councillors will then be required to give conscientious consideration to the results and consider the proposed order, including any proposed amendments made. Therefore, I recommend that councillors agree the decisions sought in this report, which are as follows. Consider the evidence base detailed in the statements excuse me, attached to this report for a PSPO in the terms set out at Appendix 1 of the report. Agree to consult on the proposed PSPO in accordance with the statutory requirements, that is to say, to consult with the local Chief Officer of Police, the Police and Crime Commissioner, owners or occupiers of land within the proposed affected areas, appropriate community representatives and the relevant local parish councils. And note that the proposed PSPO at Annex 1 replaced that agreed but not implemented by Cabinet. Well, it will now be Annex 4 on the 24th of July 25. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Alban. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say a big thank you to the monitoring officer and her team for putting this report again together for the third time, and everybody who contributed, including myself, business people and local people and community groups that are affected by this on a daily basis. I mean, just this week I heard a friend tell me that one of their friends has actually decided to move out of Ramsgate because of she doesn't feel safe walking through town. So it is really shocking, and I hope that all political parties and every single councillor in Thanet would actually fully support this, and we don't find ourselves in a similar situation, because the only losers is our communities and our spaces. It's not just in Ramsgate, it's not just the town centre, it's Ellington Park, the churchyards. We need to do something about this, and I think it's the impact of not having a PSPO has been terrible on our communities. So a massive thank you to everybody involved in pulling the report together, and I just hope and pray that we can push this through, because it certainly gives our officers, our enforcement officers and the police different tools to use instead of criminalising people, that some of whom are vulnerable themselves. So massive thank you.
Councillor Keane.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wing. I mean, absolutely, I agree with you. And I think we have certainly missed not having a PSPO in place. And we've seen that in some of the behaviours that have been reported in the evidence we've provided, which really makes for very sad reading. And so I hope that this will now go forward.
Thank you. Councillor Beaufort.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Keane. I agree that the PSPO would enhance the lives of residents and visitors of the Thanet towns by increasing their safety and their perception of it. However, the Equality Impact Assessment states that officers who are authorised to enforce the PSPO must undertake training on how to effectively enforce it in a non-discriminatory way, and that enforcement officers will do unconscious biased online training and undertake regular meetings with police to support the legislation requirements. I feel that these requirements must be strictly upheld in order for the PSPO to be effective without restricting the enjoyment of our towns by all, and ask who will be responsible for this training and the monitoring of it.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. The training that you're referring to has been in place for a long time when we had the PSPO in place beforehand. And of course, for all our enforcement officers, it's a part of their day job, the way they interact with the public in a non-discriminatory way. So actually, it's not anything new. It's just, putting it in the document so that people are aware that this happens, because some of the comments we had back previously were around how it will be enforced and whether that will be fair to the public and people just enjoying themselves. And I'm confident that the training we have in place and the way it has been enforced previously will uphold that. Thank you. I don't know if officers want to add anything.
I'm not seeing any enthusiasm behind you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. Here we are, and hopefully shortly to see this come into place, because now it's evidence-based, and I'd like to recognise the amount of work that the monitoring officer and the department have done on this. It does now make sense, and it's taken out those contentious parts that caused the debate before. The only question I've got is about enforcement officers, and who are we to employ further enforcement officers that will patrol on this, or will it just be used to back up those that are already in existence?
Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I'm not aware of any plans or budgeting for more enforcement officers at the moment, but I am also aware that the enforcement officers we had before were doing a very good job. And as we pointed out previously, the whole thing about the PSPO is not just about issuing fixed penalty notices. It's about working with the public and you know, sort of diffusing situations before they become something more serious that perhaps the police or that would need to deal with. So I don't think we need more officers. I think we just need to make sure that enforcement officers are visible and that they are seen to be doing the job that we want them to do as they were before.
Thank you, Councillor Keane. I'm grateful to the Daily Telegraph, which is not an expression you'd ever expected to hear me say, for a report yesterday which said that 1 in 5 councils in England have introduced public space protection orders which tackle swearing and abusive and foul language. So it is remarkable that this council was reported as and seen as an outlier on this issue when it was nothing of the sort. And I suggest the motives of those who challenged us was in fact the outlier and not anything that this council did. Nevertheless, there are legal issues which could have been explored in court, and we were not prepared to have them explored at the cost of Thanet taxpayers. That is why we are where we are. I think that we have a robust proposal here, which, as has been discussed, has been well evidenced, and a lot of work has gone into making sure that it is fully compliant with the law, and I'm confident that we'll be able to bring it into force, subject to any comments, obviously, which come up through the consultation. Members. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. What's important as a Ramsgate councillor, and Councillor Wing is absolutely spot on with what she's saying. The town council, as probably most people know, have hired a security firm to help both our residents and our local businesses to feel safe. And that is the feedback that I've had. I get daily videos from the enforcement officers, from the security officers. And some of the things that they've sent to me is unbelievable, of what's happening in broad daylight in the High Street, in Ramsgate and other places. And I think, so this is absolutely important, and it's fully supported by Chief Inspector Swallow. And that is the other thing. He's fully supportive of PSPO, and with his backing, I'm hoping certainly that we will go through with this. I certainly want to go through with it, whatever, and for it to be put in place. And whilst whilst a certain president across the pond said to one of our politicians, "You're not Winston Churchill," neither am I, but I think we'll be happy to fight them on our beaches. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Bright.
Thank you. I think fighting on the beaches is what this PSPO is designed to prevent, right? Yeah, thanks, obviously, to the monitoring officer and the team. We know as cabinet members just how much work has gone into this over the last year, and we're incredibly grateful. I'm really glad the PSPO meets with our colleagues' approval. Finally, I have to take issue with the view that somehow preventing the use of foul and abusive language and harassment of women and girls was somehow contentious. And, as Councillor Everett's already said, it's nothing that councils up and down the country don't already do. It's disappointing that we've had to dilute it year on versus what our original proposal was. But I am hopeful that this will finally deliver the steps needed to prevent some of the ongoing ASB we've seen in our towns across the district across the last couple of years. And that's what it's all about. As Councillor Alban says, by clamping down on this selfish behaviour, we are listening to our residents. We are making them feel safer. And that is what they wanted. They wanted that last year, they want that this year, they continue to want it. It would be a far better world had we not had to dilute this document. Unfortunately, we live in a world where members of this council prioritise playing silly little games over our residents' quality of life. I sincerely hope that those who did that are suitably ashamed of themselves. I imagine they'll not be, but they should be. Thank goodness that Labour has, Thanet has a Labour-run council that puts residents' needs above silly PR stunts. This PSPO will, I hope, restore a sense of safety to our towns, and I can't wait to vote it through.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Anybody else? Okay, members, that's been moved and seconded. Would you like to vote, please? Okay, that's been agreed. That concludes the business for this evening. Thank you for your attendance. Enjoy the rest of the evening. I make it 11 minutes past 8 and the live stream will now end. Thank you.